Well, we can officially start. I am Amanda Gillen. I'm the Director of Learning here at the Frick Pittsburgh Museum. And with me on screen is the red dress artist, the creative genius behind the beautiful, beautiful red dress, Kirstie Macleod. Kirstie, thank you for being here with us today. Kirstie is in England, and we are, of course, here in Pittsburgh, hence the Sunday morning for us, Sunday afternoon program for Kirstie. And we thank you so much for giving up some weekend time to talk with us and to be here. I should say, in addition to people who are online, in our education center here, we have about 20 people downstairs having donuts and champagne and a special cocktail. So for those of you who joined online, I sent out the recipe for a pomegranate fizz in honor of the red dress. It's just champagne or sparkling water and pomegranate juice and pomegranate seeds. It's a Pioneer Woman recipe. I told Kirstie I will not drink mine during the program, but I hope some of you at home are enjoying this as we go. We're going to have a wonderful hour together talking about the red dress. Kirstie is in her studio. So what we'll do today is that she's going to present a bit about the dress, and then we get a special sort of inside look at her space and her creative workspace where things get done, and she has a lot of great things to show us. I will be monitoring the Q&A function here. You can use the chat. I think it's enabled, but if you want to ask Kirstie any questions, please put them in the Q&A and I will relay them to her, and she can have a little bit of a dialogue back and forth with our audience. I think the chat is enabled, but if you need anything, in fact, let me check this right now. I just want to make sure it's working. Again, I haven't done a program online in just a little bit. Hosts and panelists can see the message. It should be on. We're recording this program. Thank you to Kirstie for that as well. So we'll be able to share this out with others who couldn't join us live. So Kirstie, welcome. Thank you for
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here. It's amazing because this exhibition, I think it's been, is it 2, maybe 3 years in the making? So it's such an exciting time for me now, knowing that it has all come to fruition. And I've been getting so many wonderful messages, emails, being tagged in images on social media, so I can see that the red dress is getting lots of love. And it's actually the only exhibition that I've not seen in person of the dress. So it's lovely that I get to engage with you guys in this way, at least, to kind of connect. But it's also just an incredible year for the dress and for me, because the dress is now completed after 14 years. Who's that? Hello from the classrooms. Hello. And yeah, you know, a project that started in a very humble way, and it's just still staggers me that what the dress has become, really, and how much it's grown, how much the dress and I have grown together, and that actually it went on for 14 years and involved 380 different embroideries. So it's lots of pinch myself moments for sure. And I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to be doing this work. And I imagine it's a life's work. You know, the dress will be traveling for many years to come. Even though the creation is now over, the dress still has lots of magic to do for sure.
My questions, you know, which we can again do later, but how you feel about the dress still being out there, and you know, it's a long time to have a relationship with your work of art.
It is. It's a very long time, and it's kind of taken over my life entirely for the last 6-7 years, I would say. So it's definitely now a very new chapter, and it's still in transition, probably, to be honest. It is a strange feeling of kind of loss, but also gain, and feeling so excited about what the dress has become. It doesn't really need me so much anymore. She's off doing her thing. But yeah, it's an incredible journey. It's I could speak about it for weeks. So yeah, I'll try and condense my words into much shorter than that. Also wanted to thank the Fiber Arts Guild in Pittsburgh, because it's really down to them that this has all happened. I did a talk with them in 2020, and they really championed it through and managed to you know, to kind of bring the dress to the Frick, to the curators at the Frick. And yeah, they've also obviously managed the Calico dress as well. So they're a huge thank you to them for all they've done in bringing this exhibition.
We'll talk more later in the Calico dress later in the program. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, so I've got a PowerPoint to share, which has got lots of images, a bit of video, and it will hopefully give you a bit of an understanding of what came before and what kind of what created the dress, and introduce you to some of the artisans themselves, and then hopes and dreams for the future. So again, it's a lot of information. People often are a bit gulping at the end of when I talk, because there's just so much to say, but hopefully there'll be some interesting little tidbits in there. And then, yeah, as Amanda was saying, I can show you around the studio a bit, and then we can open it up to Q&A. So now I always love answering questions. So yeah, feel free to do that. So if I just get my share screen ready.
Dark for a minute. We're seeing Kirstie in double because we have a separate camera that will show the studio. So I will be here behind the scenes. I'll turn my camera off, and I am seeing your presentation. Thank you.
Pleasure. Cool. So yeah, as I said, it's 380 artisans are involved in the creation of the red dress from 51 countries over 14 years. So the project began in 2009 and then ended this year, 2023. So I always like to start with this image. This is Diana Milstein, and she is an embroiderer from Somerset in her late 70s, and she created a beautiful violin on the garment in 2020. And then I wrote to her a year later and I said, Diana, do you want to wear the dress in a photo shoot? I'd really love you to wear it. She was so excited, and she was just like, yes, 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 definitely. And then I kept getting messages and emails from her freaking out because she was worried the dress wouldn't fit and it wouldn't look right on her and all these things. This is the moment. I helped her get into the dress. I did up the buttons for her down the front, and then I stood back and she just stood, as you see her in this image, and the whole room went completely silent. The photographer burst into tears, and I just stood there completely awestruck at this vision. Each time one of the embroiderers wears the dress, she brings her presence and imbues the garment with her own history, her own qualities, her own personality. And in this instance, it was just so deep and powerful. And yeah, she actually isn't so keen on this image. She liked the ones where she was much more posy. But I said, Diana, honestly, this image, it just encompasses so much of what the project's about, and very, very, very powerful. On the left here, we have Charmin. She is from Iraq and is currently being supported in Swansea by a charity called the Swansea Women's Asylum and Refugee Support Group. It was a pleasure to meet Charmin at a group embroidery event I held at a museum in Wales, the National Waterfront Museum. And she stitched a beautiful little motif at the back of the skirt. And then I asked her if she wanted to wear the dress, and she was so excited and did not want to take it off. It took me so long to manage to get it off her at the end. But she still writes to me regularly, and she still says it was the best day of her life that day. It was an absolute pleasure to connect with her and to hear her story, and just actually how empowered and happy and strong and she is, and she's loving living in Swansea, and it was just a very uplifting connection to meet with Charmin. On the right, we have Saranda Bobiecki, who is the Deputy Head of Parliament in Kosovo. So I went to Kosovo in 2021, 3 years, I think it was, after a panel had been created in Kosovo by two women supported by Sister Stitch, which is an initiative by Manchester Aid to Kosovo. And they work with individuals in a town called Podiev. So these were refugees in the war who had to flee their town and are now back rebuilding their lives in Podiev. Saranda is also from Podiev, and she was involved in a massacre that killed most of her family. It was only her father and one cousin, I believe, that survived the massacre. She took 16 bullets to her own body and was left for dead. Was found by a Serbian medic, taken to a Serbian hospital, and basically left in a corner and essentially was dying. Beautifully, an English photographer was taking pictures in the hospital and found her in a corner and basically rescued her and managed to get her flown back to the UK, where she could receive the proper treatment in a proper hospital for bullet wounds. And she ended up staying in Manchester with her cousin and father for many, many years, and actually ended up going to school and university, and has now come back to Kosovo very empowered, very headstrong, very driven, and she's making huge leaps in terms of politics, but also healing, the country's healing, which is still very raw, and is a massive figure of empowerment, obviously for women in the country, but also for men. So it was an absolute privilege to meet her. She invited me to come to Parliament to meet her with the dress, and then to my utter surprise asked to wear it, and you can see her here looking like a queen, and she wandered around the corridors of Parliament for ages, and it was very, very surreal, very magical day for me. And she was in the midst of lots of very important elections and debates, and she said, as she was wearing the dress, as I stand here now, I feel the connection to all the women who have made this dress. And she was saying how it made her feel very strong. So I'm still in touch with Saranda, and in fact it was she who organised the dresses exhibit at the Council of Europe earlier this year. This is lovely Kazia from Jamaica. She stitched her initials on the dress and then wore it at a big studio shoot in Somerset last year. Of all the dresses, of all the photographs of the dress, I feel this one is the closest to the quality of the fabric. It's actually quite hard to photograph, even though there are so many colours, and it still looks great, but it's very hard to really try and get the quality of the fabric. So what is the red dress? I could talk about this for, days and days and days, but I've really tried to hone it down to 4 key points. It is a dialogue of diverse cultures and identity. It unites individuals from around the world without borders and boundaries. So those first 2 points were at the heart of the initial idea, the initial seed of the red dress, was to bring people together rather than separating them and tearing them apart. It was to create a piece of work involving many, many different people from different backgrounds, different voices, without prejudice, without borders, just to create this united voice. After a few years, and after the commissions had begun and the dress began to form, it became more and more obvious to me that the dress had a potential to be a platform to amplify vulnerable individuals' voices. Stories were being listened to, it was being noticed, therefore it was a really good vehicle to try and help amplify those who were struggling to be heard. And of course, the red dress is a celebration of the universal language of embroidery. So anything I can do to champion the benefits and wonder of embroidery, I would always do. I think it's just an incredible way to express. It's an incredible art form, very underrated, very understood. But yeah, for me, it was just an obvious choice because it is so accessible. So what came before? I was born in Venezuela, and every 3 years my family and I moved to a different country. So my father used to work in energy. He began working in oil, then he moved to hydrogen and then to biofuels. So it just meant that every few years we would be posted to a different country. And then when I was about 10, my sisters and I came back to boarding school in England. So we kind of spent term times in an English boarding school and then holidays wherever my parents were at the time. So it was, you kind of think what your childhood is normal, or it is to you. But as I grew older, I realized, wow, that was actually quite an interesting way to be brought up. But I was, with my sisters, we were very exposed to so many different cultures and ways of doing things, different languages, different customs, different foods, different colors, different textiles. And it certainly did ignite in me this ongoing desire to keep on connecting and reaching out to different communities and cultures. And I think if I hadn't been an artist, I would have been an anthropologist. I've always loved studying and understanding different cultures. All the women in my family, in some way or another, were really very, very good at textiles. So one of my grandmothers is an incredible knitter. The other one used to make tapestries. My mum used to make a lot of our own clothes when we were young. So I just remember often just seeing women creating. And then when I was 9 and we were living in Nigeria at the time, I was taught to embroider by a wonderful Indian teacher. And so that's how that all begun. I love the slowness of embroidery. I think in my own life, I'm quite fast, quite hyper. And even in my painting work, it's quite quite quick. But with embroidery, there's a real stillness. There's a real opportunity to connect to yourself, to your breath, to your hands, to express, to kind of slow down. And when you're stitching in community with other people, then it really does open up this really beautiful potential of connection, and not even without needing words. It's just this shared love and this shared active stitch. So I did a BA in textile design, and then an MA in visual language and performance. And following all that training, I went traveling for a very long time and spent many months in India. And as I'm sure many of you will know, just the incredible quantity of textiles, particularly embroidery in India, is wonderful. And I spent a lot of time just stitching beside other women. Often we couldn't speak in a common language, but just that shared act of stitching I found very profound. And I think over the few months I was there, I ended up making a jacket, and I just used to kind of copy other people's stitches, or find little bits of buttons and bits of old fabric and just put it all together. But this whole idea of communicating without words was very powerful to me, and undoubtedly is another seed to the red dress. And when I came back to the UK, I then moved to London and really went for it in working as a fine artist. I did lots of gallery exhibitions, worked with lots of curators and galleries. And my work was investigating identity and the voices of women expressed through textiles, often garments, in installation and performance. I've got a few pictures to show you. This is Emmelan, which was funded by Quintessentially Art. And it's a huge, big blue dress. It's 16 meters in diameter. And I would sleep in the middle of the dress. So here you're seeing it in Dubai on a beach, but actually it was commissioned for this exhibition. It was a Mario Testino exhibition. So he's a kind of very glossy fashion photographer from Brazil. And it was this very swanky gallery, and Moe and Chandon had sponsored the event. So my idea was just to fill the whole gallery with this dress. And in that way, pulling all the audience into the piece, whether they liked it or not. And it was fascinating to see how people responded to this work, how some would be skirting around the edges, really worried about trampling on the fabric and going anywhere near me. And others had no issues with marching all over it and coming in and prodding me and things. But this is very typical to the kind of work I used to do. So very kind of high impact color. Often quite dramatic, and would often be looking at quite kind of uncomfortable undertones of oppression and inequality. So there's another gallery in Notting Hill where the dress had to spill out onto the road. So this is Phaedra. This was a costume I was commissioned to create for Happy Days Festival in Ireland. So it was an old abandoned castle in the middle of nowhere, and the space we were given was an old equestrian centre just behind the castle. So my brief was to create a dress that was 15 foot high, that would slowly change state over the 15-minute performance, which was a solo soprano singer, Ruby Philogene, and it had to slowly revolve. So luckily, I've been working a lot with Solufleece, which I'm sure many of you will know. It's a cellulose-based fiber that just dissolves in water. So I knew I could do something with dissolving. So my plan initially was to create a huge steel structure, like a kind of crinoline, onto a revolving platform, and then wire up the crinoline with irrigation tubes. So tubes that you'd see in like a greenhouse or something for plants. And then have a hose pipe coming from the dress going all the way out to the side, and then attached to a tap. So when I spoke to the director, she was like, yeah, perfect, definitely. So I was like, well, do you want like a fast dissolve where it's very dramatic and everything just comes off? Or do you want like a kind of gnarled, kind of slow trickle where the dress just begins to kind of melt and change shape? So she said, yeah, the second option, definitely. Go for more subtle. So this is me putting together the Solufleece layer, which was epic. And I had to do 2 performance dresses and 3 rehearsal dresses, which were less complicated. But yeah, the two main ones were very, very full. And trying to sew with solufleece in the summer when your hands are prone to sweating was just a nightmare because it kept going through the fabric. So it was just the whole time putting cold water on my hands and trying to keep cool with air conditioning. And in the end, I had to get someone to help me because it just was just so much. But here you are, you can see in the performance the before and pretty much after. So it just began to melt. It was almost like a cake, really, just dissolving off and falling off onto the floor. But seeing the audience's face was incredible, kind of disbelief at what they were seeing. And then this is just to show you after. So that's Ruby. She had to be cherry picked in and out of the dress. And that's me just running up and down the side, trying to help and undo various things. But she had to navigate the dusty floor, which is quite problematic for singers. And also she was wired up with the irrigation tubes herself. So she had cold water trickling on her during the performance, which was, very brave of her to do it. But she loved it. She loved the experience. And she just kept saying, oh, it's performance art, it's performance art, it's worth it. So then the red dress. So this is the initial sketch of the dress, which you can see is slightly different presentation to how you see it now. It all came about because someone, a curator from Dubai, had seen the big blue dress that I showed you, Emilan, and invited me to come out to Dubai to show that piece of work on the beach, that picture that you saw, but also to create a new piece of work. And they managed to secure funding from the British Council for the whole trip and to support the new body of work. So this is like totally back to front to how it usually happens being an artist. Usually you have your idea and then you spend however many months or years trying to get the funding secured to make it. So to be given that money up front was like a dream, really. And it just allowed me all this space to just think big. Like I remember going to a cafe straight away when I heard the news and just thought, well, what would I make? And it was just so quick. I sketched it in a matter of minutes. This idea of all the things that matter the most to me into one piece of work, and it was the red dress. So you can see in this image, first of all, the dress is contained within a cube. So thinking of it more as an art installation at this point, rather than what you see now, I would sit and embroider onto the dress for about 3 or 4 hours at a time. And the dress and I were completely sealed inside a Perspex cube. So this is the initial performance. So you can see loads of things are different now. So first of all, there was 7 meters by 3 meters more fabric in the skirt then, which had a very dramatic effect inside the cube. But I mean, really, you could see very little of the embroidery itself. Also, we had to adhere to Sharia law. So the dress had to have a collar put on it. Also, I was not allowed to wear it myself because they wanted me to speak to the VIP visitors. So I had to find someone to wear the dress. And very luckily, I managed to, a friend of a friend, whose father's from Dubai, mother's English, and she was able to fly out back first of all to England for the dress fitting and then come with me to Dubai to wear the dress. But it wasn't ideal in many ways, this performance. And as soon as the dress came back to me in the UK, the whole dress was reworked. And yeah, it was the piece that I originally decided on. But I'm always very grateful to have been given the opportunity from British Council in Dubai, because without them, then this project, wouldn't have been able to start. And massive mention to Gail Faulkner, who is my collaborator. She's helped me on many of my projects over the years, and she's been an intrinsic part of the Red Dresses journey too. So first of all, she helped me create the dress in 2009. And then in 2019, she came down to help me reconfigure the skirt. And then again in 2023. So actually to mention, the skirt's been reconfigured 4 times over the years because I never knew what was coming back. And sometimes where I thought something would go, it really clashed or it didn't work. So then it would have to just all come to pieces again and then be rebuilt. So it developed very organically over the years. So the embroidery commissions themselves, the artists all had the same brief, which was to create an embroidery that in some way articulates an element of your own identity and the culture that you are from. The size of the panel and the commission fee were always fixed before the panel was sent, and in some cases it had to be delivered by hand just to make sure it actually got there. The artists all use their own threads and were just simply asked to send it back when they were ready, with documentation if possible. So most of the artists sent their work back within 2 or 3 months. The Mexican embroiderers both finished theirs within a week, which is incredible because they're some of the most complex. The longest was Tamay from Vietnam, who took 7.5 years to get hers back to me. So I completely given up hope. It was such a treat to receive it. So the first few years of the dress, this was how it was presented, with me embroidering onto the dress inside a cube. So on the left here, we've got me at the Royal Academy at an event there in London. The top right is in Paris at Galerie Mag. Bottom right is in the Premio Valtellina Textiles Award in Maniago in Italy, where the dress won first prize. So this is all very kind of art gallery, art world, which is very different to how it is now. So this is the last time, that I ever wore the dress myself publicly, and inside the cube. So by this point, I had begun to feel increasingly more uncomfortable with the presentation. First of all, with me being involved in it, because these stories were not my own, and it felt like the embroideries themselves needed to take center stage. And when you have anyone wearing a dress, you automatically focus on the person. And I felt that it was a distracting element to the piece. And then obviously the cube as well, it's not a subtle layer to the piece. And I think instead of trying to focus on the oppression and inequality of how I felt, the feminine voice was being treated, actually I wanted to focus on how strong and empowered women are. So now whenever you see the dress is displayed on a mannequin very simply, and in that way the embroidery and the embroiderers can remain the center stage. So from that point on, it was about getting the dress out into the world to connect with communities, with individuals where it can make a difference, to shine a light on important initiatives, charity work, and voices. And that's just when everything just changed and flew, and it was a very, very exciting time. This is an impromptu embroidery circle when I was visiting the 2 artisans in Mexico, and this is in Zenaida's kitchen one afternoon. So during this time of change, I really needed to acknowledge and face a lot of pretty uncomfortable issues, looking very much at identity, race, and vulnerable voices, and really, and very importantly, own my position as a middle-class white woman working with vulnerable individuals from low-income countries, and be very aware that for some, this is reminiscent of oppressive power dynamics of colonialism and cultural appropriation. So although I don't really feel like I belong to any particular country or culture, I have definitely been born into a life that has allowed me a huge amount of geographic mobility and being able to find funding for my art and more. So there was a few weeks where I really did think about whether I should stop the project because I couldn't get my head around how I could make it work. I didn't want the dress to in any way provoke or make people feel triggered in that way, or bring trauma to people's experience, when actually what I was trying to do was the opposite. But in the end, I decided to better use these opportunities and privileges that I have been given and support people with difficult circumstances to create a platform on which they could share their story and, very importantly, be heard. So this is last year, 2022, in Swansea, connecting with the Swansea Women's Asylum and Refugee Support Group. So women from so many different countries, all now being supported in Wales and flourishing. With all these events and connections that I do with the dress, I do often get worried about, how can I hold the space in the best way? Like, I haven't had their life experience, are they going to be okay with me, interacting with them in this way? And in every single situation, as soon as the women see the dress, and as soon as I start talking about all the stories and about the dress's journey, there's never an issue. It's always just this really uplifting and uniting experience. And I think for the most part, people can find so much comfort in seeing so much of the embroidery that exists there. And often in these kinds of events, the individuals would stitch in a particular place next to a particular embroidery that they felt an affinity to. And it creates this beautiful kind of ongoing dialogue between individuals that probably won't meet in person, but through the dress, they are having this really poignant discussion. This was a particularly strong day for that. Another element I really wanted to align and to acknowledge with was to connect with trans and non-binary individuals. So I took part in an event called the Flint Festival in Bristol, which is for femme, lesbian, intersex, non-binary and trans individuals, and create this really, really inclusive event, which really was a lot about discussion and debate. The charity White Ribbon Alliance was part of the event, and they launched a whole new campaign on gender-based violence, which is hugely important. And I was honoured that the dress could help shine a light on that too. And then very soon after that, the dress and I flew to the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, which was incredible. We spent the week outside the big auditorium during the pay session on equality and non-discrimination. So I was very fortunate to be able to go and listen to much of the debating and the talks happening. There was a huge amount on gender-based violence and inequality in Ukraine and Iran, and all topics which are highly important and all voiced on the dress itself. But it was a very surreal experience for me being in such a political sphere. And I was kind of thoughtful beforehand, how is this going to work? How can I best create access to this dress? It's such a different sphere, but there was nothing to worry about. Everyone just came over and spoke to us the whole time. And I had this very poignant discussion on the last day where someone said to me, one of the delegates said something like, every single debate that's happened in that room this week is all encompassed on looking at this dress for 15 seconds. And it was this really lovely conversation about how art can transcend words and how sometimes you just need to feel. And that, I think, is what the red dress really does do incredibly well, is it just creates such a strong response when you see it, because it is so full of poignant conversations and stories and memories and desires and hopes and dreams. And I think you could write for reams and reams on it, but actually just to absorb it, just to hold it, just to look at it, you can get it all in just a few seconds. And then to Tintersfield National Trust House in England, which is a very grand kind of stately home, and they have a red drawing room. So the curator there was desperate to get the red dress in there, and it was a beautiful exhibition, really, really lovely, and it opened it up to a whole new audience here in the UK. So questions I'm always asked about the dress. Why did I choose the colour red? So very simply, because you can't ignore red, and I really wanted the stories to be noticed. They're all so important, and I wanted people to stop and to listen and to take notice of the project and of the garment. So it's like a kind of shouty colour, isn't it? And it's kind of stop and danger, but it's also love and it's passion. It's also hate and love and rage. It's all these very, very powerful primal emotions and feelings, and it's blood and it's women's cycles. So I think for me, if in terms of like a raw primal colour to get people's attention and to be listened to, it was always going to be red. How did I find the embroiderers? So I used to tutor at the Royal School of Needlework in Hampton Court Palace in London. So I had a lovely network there that was very useful. Also my time working in London as a fine artist, I'd built up a really good network there. But actually the most useful was my parents' connections. Having travelled to so many different countries, for so many years, we had different contacts and communities in so many different countries. So I just wrote hundreds and thousands of emails for years and years. And it was very slow to start. The dress didn't look like it does now, so it was much harder to get people interested. But little by little, year by year, as the dress grew, it became, much more appealing. And actually, for the last kind of 7-8 years, it was purely people writing to me asking if they could work on the dress or their charity could be involved. Can I have a bit of water? So people always ask me what my favorite panel is, and I could never choose. It would feel so wrong to choose any particular panel. But what I would say is there is just so many incredibly strong voices on the dress. There are panels that make me feel like I want to cry. There are panels that make me want to weep. Others that make me feel so empowered and happy, and others that just make me want to smile. They're all just so strong. But what I really love is how they talk to each other, and how over the years this dialogue has just grown and grown and grown. And then the trim around the edge of the skirt seems to fascinate people. So I bought a roll of burgundy silk dupion initially in Paris. I believe the fabric comes from India originally. And I was given the opportunity to take that fabric to an embroidery studio in Paris called Albert Gauguin, which no longer exists. But they are able to machine embroider onto fabric a variety of different designs, and they can also add this kind of edging to it. So I could choose between, scallops or triangles or squares or all these different kind of patterns. So I basically just chose. And it was an idea to get how to start the dress off. If you imagine just a massive roll of fabric, it was a bit daunting. So I thought, well, I'll get a portion of it embroidered just to kind of start it off. So once I had the fabric, I just took off the whole of the scalloped edge at the bottom, and then added it on once the dress and skirt was formed. But bearing in mind the skirt was taken to pieces 4 times, so too did the edging come off and back on again. So it's been moved and taken apart many, many times. And actually, if you look closely around at the trim, you'll see some of the pieces are about 1 inch wide. It's been copied and pasted so many times. Yeah, so it's a lovely way to kind of end the skirt. But yeah, people often ask about how it was created. So on top of the gold work now is obviously all the other embroidery. So you're seeing kind of lots of layers of embroidery on that trim. So the embroiderers themselves, we have 367 women and girls. 60% of those are vulnerable. 11 men and boys, and 2 non-binary artists. So there are 2 tiers of artisans. 141 are the commissioned embroiderers. So they were paid for their work. There was a whole formal process of figuring out their panel size, their design. It would often take many months to kind of bring to fruition the whole embroidery from start to finish. They receive a portion of all ongoing exhibition and merchandise fees through all the Red Dress exhibitions, and they can sell their own work through the Red Dress Etsy shop. So as long as the Red Dress is out there doing its thing, and I'm fully intending for all those embroiderers to be alongside with us. The rest of the embroidery, generally very small motifs, were added by enthusiastic audience at drop-in exhibitions and events. So here is the world map, all the different embroiderers. And just to tell you share a few of the embroiderers themselves. I wish I could share more. This is a beautiful group called Embroidery in Rwanda, in Africa. And 6 of the women from the group worked on a very striking panel. They are supported by an initiative called Kirstie, which is a social enterprise begun by Nicole Esselin from Belgium. And she creates safe spaces and places of work for widows of war. So these are women who have lost children, husbands, homes, jobs, everything. And very sadly, within their cultures, widows are not deemed acceptable. and they are often ostracized from their own families and village communities as well. I was told an awful story of how a woman went to a family occasion for lunch, and everyone sat around in the center of the room around the table eating, but she was asked to stand with her back against the wall on the other side of the room while they ate. She had to just watch. So it's hard to really imagine that, isn't it, after what these women have been through. But Nicole creates these spaces for the women to come, and they are taught very, very fine embroidery, and they stitch beautiful linens. She gives them regular employment. She also gives them loans to buy their own houses, so they are independent, they are empowered. But what they also have now is community, which is probably, epically part of their healing journey. When you sit beside someone who's been through similar, how powerful is that? You can really begin to try and understand and accept and move forward from what you've been through. This is their panel. They call it From Darkness to Light. It depicts a child under a machete in the center of the spiral, being wielded by a man, and it's tight black circles. Above the figures, you see a river of blood. To the left, a tree on fire. But the circles become more expansive as they move out to the sides, and they turn into color, and finally the images of a sun. So when I received this, I remember the day I received it, and I had to sit down. I felt like I'd been hit in the face just from the impact, the power that this embroidery had when I looked at it. Beautiful panel here from Australia, from a group of women in Brisbane, and it's a celebration of Australia, Aboriginal sun and water motifs going into a beautiful coral reef on the bottom right hand side, Uluru in the center, gum leaves, and a beautiful Australian sunset. These women donated all their commission fee to ovarian cancer research. This is a close-up of the coral reef area, which is just so incredibly detailed. This was a very powerful exhibition in Warsaw, in Poland last year. And it was an exhibition called Traces of Sisterhood. And it was involving work from female artists from all around the world engaged in social justice and empowering women. So I was so thrilled that the dress was asked to be a part of that. But the cherry on the top came when the curator wrote to me nearing the time I flew out to say, would you like to work with a group of refugees from Ukraine? Could they work on the dress? I said, yes, definitely. And so it all happened quite last minute, but the women came in to the room to see the dress. And this is in September, after the war started in March, I believe. So things are still very raw. And I was really very worried about how I was going to hold this space that day. And how could I possibly relate and understand, how they were feeling. But actually, it was the most uplifting and joyous of days. We had an amazing day just connecting and talking about the stitches and the dresses and about their homes and how they are dreaming of a better future for Ukraine, and that they hope that there's a woman going to come into government to really lead this rebuild, and as life givers, women can bring peace to the country. The women all decided to stitch in yellow to feel happy. Of course, there was a huge amount of trauma and holding with all of them, and many of them had only been in Warsaw for a matter of weeks. But this shared act of togetherness was, really very powerful for them. And often the women would suddenly start singing traditional songs from Ukraine, and they actually didn't know each other before this day, but just in singing together, they could stand, shoulder to shoulder, remembering, connecting to their homeland and to each other. And very powerfully, a woman came in off the street who was Ukrainian, and she'd heard the singing, and she came in and she was very emotional and wanted to know what was happening. So once we'd explained to her, she was just blown away. And I said, would you like to join? So that's her in the back of the circle there in the blue shirt with the black top underneath. So she sat in and sung with the women for the rest of the day and stitched onto the dress too. And I've got a little clip of video of the women singing here. moving to the next. Sorry, there we go. And then the last group I wanted to quickly talk about, so I know we're running a bit out of time here, is the wonderful artisans from Fansina in Egypt, Sinai, in the middle of the desert. Fansina is an amazing enterprise started by Salima Gabali, who is in the center of that image there with the leopard print scarf on her head. She supports between 300 and 400 women living in poverty in and around St. Catherine's. They make the most incredible handicrafts, a really supportive community, Bedouin community. And this was one of the few trips that I actually got funding to go out to initiate and to connect with the women themselves, which was a joy to be able to, spend time with the women and eat with the women and get to know their families and fully understand the embroidery that they created. Their panel was the biggest on the dress. It's 4 meters by 2 meters and has since been cut up into many pieces, which you can see all around the dress. There was a huge panel. The whole center back panel is all Fansina. So what you're seeing here is the gold work that was put on in Paris. That's me delivering it. And then they then traced and created their own work through different colors and beading onto the skirt itself. Salima in the middle, here's some of the work that they did. They're very inspired by natural flora and fauna in the desert. So rosemary flowers, thyme flowers, also suns, moons, stars. So this is last year. I went back to the desert to visit the women. I wanted to create a celebratory honouring to the 50 women who had worked on the dress for over a month. So with Salima, we made a whole plan to create this a big party and celebration of thanks in the middle of the desert. And it was wonderful. We had the dress on display. The women came in and were quite shocked, I think, at the beginning, and didn't quite know how to interact with me or the dress. But once I began to speak and show them the embroidery from all the other women in the world, they suddenly became so engaged and excited. And of course, then they began to find the work that they had created 7 years before. This is one of the group wearing the dress, which was very exciting. Bedouin culture is such that women don't like to have their faces photographed. So standing behind me are about 60 women, all in burqas. And this is Rahma wearing the dress there. And following the celebratory feast that we had in the desert, I then traveled to Cairo with Salima and 6 of the embroiderers, and we did a big exhibition in the British Embassy's ballroom, which was very swanky and snazzy and full of TV and radio and all sorts of cameras and journalists. A stark contrast to being in the desert, but the whole aim really was to massively kind of bring awareness to Fansina and the amazing work that Salima's doing, and the beautiful creations that the women create themselves. So it was very interesting to see how the women responded to the space and to all the TV and the hype. But the most exciting moment for me was seeing Salima giving her speech on stage, and then the women coming up with her, and the whole ballroom just erupted into applause. And that for me was one of the most exciting moments of the red dress journey. Every time I see the red dress being able to support and elevate those who really deserve to have that, that's when I feel that the dress is doing exactly what it should be doing. So that was fantastic. So just to conclude, the future of the red dress is to continue to share the story of the garment and its embroideries across the globe, with an aim of being accessible to all. So as well as these amazing museum exhibitions, I'm doing lots of presentations, outreach events and online engagements. So as well as exhibitions, I do lots of work with charities, and I deliver events with BSL interpreters, with art therapists, in any way that I can create access to all communities, trying to take away any borders. I'm also now offering embroidery workshops, both in person in my studio here, and now just about to start online, just to kind of really keep the spirits of collaborative embroidery in full swing. And then to take the completed garment to visit all the commissioned embroiderers, to display the red dress alongside their own work in their chosen venue in their own country. And as well as that, to continue trying to raise funds for their annual donation through museum exhibitions and the Red Dress Etsy shop. At the moment, I'm just about to start trying to raise a lot of funding to support the completion of a full-length documentary film of the red dress. There's currently 150 hours of footage from the last 4 years, so I have the company all ready to put it together. Just need to raise the funding. And then, of course, the big coffee table book. And then wherever possible to help promote and support other initiatives supporting the empowerment and the rights of women. Very important. So just to really finish by sharing huge gratitude to all the many people who are involved in the red dress, as well as the 380 artisans themselves. There's probably about 165 commission, exhibition fixers and coordinators involved in the project. So often between me and an exhibition, or me and embroiderer, there could be a chain of 5 or 6 different people all trying to help and really showing that commitment in making it happen. Currently 8 supporting charities, social enterprises involved, 35 plus translators, 3 BSL interpreters and 1 arts therapist. So far, the dress has been exhibited in 27 different museum and galleries, and with another 8 confirmed for the future. Funding is a big one, so I've been very grateful to receive private donations from people who are just really keen that the project can continue, which has been wonderful. Also funding from the British Council, 3 different British embassies, the Arts Council Lottery Fund, the Premio Bacellina Award in Italy, Contemporary Middle East, 3 US museums, and 441 individuals via 2 crowdfunding campaigns. Massive thanks to all the journalists, writers and bloggers that have helped share the story around the world, because that has helped so much. In 2020, a blogger called Attire's Mind wrote a story on the dress, and I didn't know who he was or about his page in any way. All I knew that was for about 2 weeks I was going ping, 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 ping in my emails, and had so many press requests and exhibition requests. I didn't understand what was happening. And then finally someone tagged me in it on Facebook, and I suddenly saw that this post had gone viral, which was very exciting. So often these are things that I have no awareness about or any control over, but these various press stories that have happened in many different countries around the world have really helped spread the story far and wide. And then, of course, to my family and friends and thousands of red dress audience who all support me all the time, and with ideas and suggestions, connections, and just really helping me power on through all these years. So yeah, that's kind of me for now. I just stop that share, shall I? That's better.
We'll see. Thank you for all of that. I have been in tears several times behind the scenes here. I mean, I've seen and read parts of these, the stories and the work, but hearing you talk about it and your emotion as you talk about it still. And the other thing that struck me is how recent a lot of this is. We know you started the project years ago, but it is, 2022, 2023, these, women are still, we're just with this dress, and now it's in our galleries, and that stays in my heart. And I think all of us who get the opportunity and the privilege to walk to the art museum and see your creation, their creation there, we have to remember all of these women. You and I were talking before we went live about the energy, right, of all of these people, both the creators and the eyes and energy of everyone who's been around that dress. Thousands, tens of thousands of people, right, at this point.
Yes,
it all lives in your object. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
My heart. We have a couple of questions.
A lot.
I want to have you have your studio, but 2 questions. I think one's a comment and one's a question. The first is the easier. How and where are you raising funds for the exhibition and film? Is there? I know your website is amazing. Is there a way individuals can support?
Oh, I see. So yeah, I mean, individuals can support the project by donating via the website. So at the moment with the film, I'm in discussion with the Council of Europe. Actually, I'm really hoping that they're going to come through. But if not, then I'm just going to be approaching all the different people that we've worked with, the dress and I, and also probably the Arts Council and the British embassies and British councils, and just hope that for someone it's the right fit. But I mean, I spend a lot of time writing funding proposals and funding requests, and most of them are turned down. So it's very hard. But then suddenly you just get one, and then that just propels you through. So yeah, it'll happen. It'll definitely happen.
It will happen. It will
Definitely
absolutely
happen. I'm
happen.
very determined. When I set my mind on something, I don't stop. So.
Imagine, Kirstie, that you're such a force, and you have such a beautiful way of speaking about this, and you're so accessible as an artist. That's not always the case, and it makes it so much easier for us to connect with you and with the work. The second comment that I wanted to read is from Linda from the Fiber Arts Guild, who was one of our main partners in the project. You know, Linda. So I wanted to read this out loud. It's worth reading, certainly. She says, "Thank you so much for mentioning the Fiber Arts Guild participation. You have answered so many of the questions that I have had following the red dress over the years. In Pittsburgh, we're trying to figure out the future of the Calico dress after this exhibition is over. There have been so many people who wish they had participated. Each of the Calico dresses has such a different flavor, reflecting the place of origin. Our experience is similar to your slow beginning and building over time. Both the red and Calico dress Pittsburgh spontaneously communicate with each other. The impact of fabric, dress, and women's work brings the strong emotional impact of the dresses. Thank you for the voices of the red dress together in
Lovely. Thank you, Linda.
Just show the Calico dress that we're talking about for people who aren't in Pittsburgh. So this is a work that we commissioned and worked with Kristie on, and the Fiber Arts Guild and the Frick Pittsburgh. So we had a blank fabric showed up earlier this year, and the Fiber Arts Guild and Frick staff, we worked both with community organizations in the region, in the city, and then also individuals, drop-in workshops and people here over the summer. So if you come to see the red dress here at the Frick, you will find this Calico dress. This is showing it in our collection gallery, but we actually created a whole sort of separate gallery adjacent to the red dress gallery, where people can look at our Calico dress and sort of sketch what they might add if they had the chance. There's kind of some response areas. So I know several institutions have created Calico dresses. Thank you, Kirstie, for giving us the chance to do this. It made the project very tangible in a different kind of way for us in Pittsburgh.
Oh, it's made, I can't believe how much has been added to it in such a short space of time. It's incredible. Absolutely beautiful dress.
Beautiful. We are lucky to have it. I'm getting comments fast and furious here. One is, we'll do two more and then we'll head into your studio tour. How many panels are there on the dress?
86.
86.
86, yeah.
Amazing, and thank you. And how do you care for the dress? I was thinking about this in terms of cleaning or just maintaining the fabric, because we, anytime you work with textiles, dust and dirt, wreaks sort of havoc on the fabric. So how do you manage that?
I've never washed it, and I never would. Someone asked me the other day, and I said, "There's no way I'm putting that in a washing machine ever." But I tend to it with. I actually use microfiber cloths, and I just put a little bit of warm water, wring it out, so it's just so dry, and then I just very carefully just go across the fabric, and it's got out everything. There's two stains that have appeared on the dress over the years, and just by doing that, they both came out. Dust is the big issue. But again, I don't want to put a hoover anywhere near it. So it's just a lot of careful wiping and tending to.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. Well, I would love if you've been so kind to show us your studio. Yes. And I know you have some
bits and bobs to share, yeah.
To show us as well.
Yes. So I wanted to show you a few things here. These, which some of you may have seen in the Red Dress Etsy shop, are beautiful birds created by Sister Stitch in Kosovo. So the panel that the ladies created is white doves, and it's called Birds of Peace. And these are some of the birds that the charity supports the women to make. And each bird is completely unique, completely hand-stitched, and shows an account of their memories of the war, about family, about their healing journey, and they're just so poignant and profound. That's them. This is the swatch. This is the fabric that I bought from Albert Gauguin. So I kept this little panel where the tag was. So it there? Albert Gauguin. And you can see that's just got a bit of the gold on it there. Always keep that one. This is my first ever embroidery in Nigeria, where I learnt to embroider a little cushion cover. So this was my first experience of embroidering. I wish I could still be in touch with that teacher and show her the dress and thank her for teaching me. And I wanted to show you two of these parcels when the panels arrive in the post, like how different it always is. So this is from Elna Carr from Sweden. So she made this beautiful handmade paper parcel with beautiful flower drawings and all this like swirls and prettiness. And then this huge one is how the Australian panel arrived, and it was in a box because there's lots of kind of almost 3D elements to that panel. It was this huge, massive piece, all bubble wrapped up. I was like, what is this? It's like a huge box, and it was this beautifully prepared panel, which was amazing. So just looking a bit around the studio, I've got to come around here. Lots of red dress posters from the different exhibitions on the left, and then some of the beautiful images of some of the embroiderers and the women wearing the dress. So I should say, actually, to be able to wear the dress, you have to have contributed to the project in some way. So mostly it's embroiderers that have worn it. Occasionally, I think a curator from Bosnia wore it, and people that have been involved, but I get so many requests from women wanting to wear it. The most unusual was the princess from Madagascar wanted to wear it to her coronation, and I just said no way, because yeah, it's always got to stay with the embroidery and the embroiderers and the project. I'm not interested in celebrity and all that. It's got to be authentic to the project. Here are some of the pieces that I've kind of been working on in the last few weeks and months. So should we go in that one? This is a big embroidery. It's kind of quite sketchy. I kind of embroider like I paint, really. There's some more here. Lots of different embroideries, pictures, lots of mementos over here, and pictures from red dress exhibitions. There's Charmin up there. And then because I'm doing all these workshops now, I've got so much embroidery, so I'm taking you all over the place. These are some of the samplers from the classes. So we're looking at world embroidery techniques from Mexico, from Vietnam, lots of samplers. So I've had loads of fun this last few weeks, working with lots of wonderful people coming to hang out with me in my studio for a day. But it's lovely to get back into techniques. I haven't really done that for a long while. Yeah. All my paints. Yeah, it's a really lovely space to have. I was saying to Amanda, I have 3 kids, so this is like where I come to get peace. And
You said it's an old shop, correct? It's
an old shop, yeah. So it's an old print house, and this was the shop bit that was open to the customers to come and come and buy things. So yeah, it had a huge desk and till and everything area. So apart from that, everything else is as it was. So this is all old storage. It's beautiful, isn't it?
It's beautiful. Yeah. Oh, thank you for showing us that. I feel like a really special window into your world. I have a question. You mentioned online workshops. Is that, I'm sure there are people thinking this, so people all over would be able to register, spend time with you like this, but learning. So I've just literally launched them on Friday because I've begun them in person in the studio, and I thought it would take me a few months to get my head around how to do online, but actually I just Googled it and it's actually quite simple. It's basically what we're doing now. So I just need 2 cameras. So no, I'm all raring to go now. So I think the first one's going to be on the 26th, Sunday the 26th of November, 4 p.m. England time, which I think is around 11 a.m. for you. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So hopefully it's nice and accessible for the US. And it's just 2 hours. It'll be, quite really relaxed, easygoing. You can chat lots through, and it's simple stitches. So it's kind of looking at running stitch, couching, chain stitch, and back stitch. So it's very simple stitches, but looking at how to little twists and techniques to make them look really striking and exciting, and looking at those stitches on the red dress too. So always going back to the red dress.
I love that so much. Thank you for explaining. We can take a couple more questions before we turn Kirstie loose to enjoy her Sunday evening at home. There's one in the Q&A. Are you still taking the dress apart and changing the panels out? Will it have future changes?
No, so that the last time the dress was taken to pieces was 2019. So since then it's been as it is. And no, now that it's finished, it won't be altered in any way. It's completely finished. The only thing that I will probably be doing a bit of maintenance on the dress. Sometimes some of the seams just get a bit worn, and especially around the bottom, little snags and things happen. So yeah, I'll be doing that. But no, the creation is complete.
One question back to the workshops. Where do we find information on the workshops? On your website?
Yeah, on the website, there's a workshop section. If you go into the main menu.
It's the reddressproject.org.
It's reddressembroidery.com. Yeah.
I'm putting it in the chat.
Reddressembroidery.com.
Thank you for that. I have a question that comes out of the work we've been doing in the galleries and working with our staff. We've been talking about the red dress as simultaneously one work of art, your creation and vision for it as a whole, and then many works of individual art. And we were wondering, do you see it as both? How do you look at this piece? Yeah. We see it sort of as both at once, and we wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think so. Initially, whilst it was an art installation, whilst I was wearing it and inside the cube, I did initially certainly very much think of it as my own piece. But as every commission came on the dress, that feeling became a little bit more uncomfortable for me. And as soon as the presentation all switched, I massively took a huge step back. And from that moment on, I feel like I describe myself as the creator of the project. I don't describe myself as the creator of the dress at all anymore, because it feels entirely wrong. So I would say I feel like it's kind of 90% all the embroiderer's piece, and I feel like it's 10% me guiding it at the back. I feel like it's been such a journey, all of this, and trying to kind of understand where my place was. And at times I went too far back, and I just didn't want to even be mentioned or anything in the writing or discussions. I just wanted it to all be about the embroiderers. But then I kind of realized, well, no, I actually am quite intrinsic to the project, and it is my curation and my direction and all these things. So, but yeah, I feel like it's very much their dress. I feel like I've created that platform for them to create and express their voices on, but it is very much their work. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That helps us, all of this, to talk to visitors in the galleries. People have been coming multiple times already. I was telling Kirstie I was up in the art museum for a couple of programs Friday and Saturday, and every other person coming in, I'm here to see the dress. Where's the dress? Show me where the dress is. So it's bringing so many people to our museum, coming back different times, different groups of friends. I know this has happened all over the world, and we thank you for allowing us to be part of the story and to be part of the work that you're doing. It's really brought a lot of powerful light to the Frick and to all of us, and you being so generous with your time and your studio and your thoughts. We really are grateful for you doing this with us today. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say in conclusion? I don't have any. Wait, one more. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's been wonderful. Thank you. I really value the opportunity to connect with you properly in this way and your community. Now I feel like the exhibition for me, it feels final now, because before I was feeling a bit far away, and now I've had this connection. Now I've been able to speak and share a bit more. No, it's a really fantastic opportunity. So thank you for making it happen.
Thank you. You might see some of us online in your workshops.
Yeah, that would be great.
To your partner who did the filming, to you for your time, to your family for sharing you with us on a Sunday. And thanks to everyone who came and joined us online, who's in our classrooms downstairs. The red dress is here at the Frick Pittsburgh through January 28th. So a lot more time to see and engage with both the red dress project and our Calico dress as well. Thank you, Kirstie, so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Have a lovely Sunday.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.